Welcome to video 7 of the Rhythm Guitar Quick Start series. In this lesson, we're going to put the bar chords that you've been working on to use by playing through some of the most common chord progressions that you're going to be exposed to as a rhythm guitarist. Being able to use your bar chords to play through common chord progressions like this is going to be really useful when you show up to a gig where you're just jamming with your friends, when you're learning a song that you don't really know, or if you're playing a church gig or something like that. We're not going to get too much into the theory of this right now, but I do want to make sure that you have some basic things down. So for this lesson, we're going to be in the key of G. That just means that the G note is going to be our tonic, home bass, or root note. We're going to cover 3 basic chord progressions. The first one is called the 1-4-5. The second one is called the 1-5-6-4. And the third one is called the 2-5-1. These numbers just refer to the chords in a certain key. And like I said, we're not going to get too much into the theory of it right now, but just be aware that every major key has 7 chords available to you that you can choose from that occur naturally in that key. And those chords can be represented by the numbers 1 through 7. We're going to use the 4 bar chords that you've learned so far to play through these progressions. And this may seem a little bit foreign to you or a little bit difficult, but stick with me throughout this, and by the end of the lesson, it'll start to make more sense to you. Closer to the end of this lesson, you're going to start to see how being able to move bar chords around like this through these chord progressions is really valuable, because you're going to be able to do it not only just in the key of G, but in any key that you want. This is probably one of the single most powerful concepts that you can learn as a rhythm guitarist, so don't feel like you have to get all this down right now. Come back and watch this lesson as many times as you need to. This first chord progression is the 1-4-5 chord progression, and we've already kind of done this in the Rhythm Guitar Quick Start series because we've been working on our G, C, D chord progression, right? Just know that this is a 1-4-5 chord progression, and when you're in a major key, the 1, 4, and 5 chords in that major key are all going to be major chords. So it starts off on our 1 chord, which, since we're in the key of G, is a G major chord. So our G major chord, bar chord right here, 6-string root note, E shape, would be 1. The 4 is going to be a C chord. So we need a C chord. So instead of jumping all around the fretboard, just move over to this A-shaped bar chord with our lowest root note here on the 5th string, which is a C. So that's a C. That's our 4 chord. Then our 5 chord is going to be a D, so we need to move up to our bar is on the 5th fret of the A string right there. That's your 5 chord, it's a D. Play through that progression G, C, D over and over again until you get those changes down. It may take a while for it to sound really smooth, but that's fine. Try to listen to that chord progression and memorize what it sounds like too. The next chord progression we're going to look at is the 1-5-6-4. And this is a really popular chord progression that you're going to hear in all types of music, rock, country, pop, all kind of stuff. And you'll probably notice that we're using 3 of the same chords that we did from the last lesson, but the order is a little different. We're going to start on the 1 again, a G, using our E bar chord shape. And instead of going to the 4 this time, we're going to go right to the 5. If you remember, the 5 is a D chord, so we need a D bar chord. And we use the 5th string shape because this is a D note right here on the 5th fret of the 5th string. So it gives us our 5. Now we need a 6 chord. What we can do for that is go up here to an E note and make a minor bar chord. The 6th chord in a major key is always minor. So in this case, we need an E minor, and that's the 3rd chord in our progression. After that, the next chord is a 4 chord in the key of G. So if you remember, that is a C. So we can come back down here to our C bar chord that uses the A shape. So that's that basic chord progression. 1, 5, 6, 4. So go through this chord progression, get the flow down. Again, it may not be great at first, but you'll eventually get it to where you start to memorize exactly where to go for that chord progression. And listen to the sound of this progression too. Try to memorize the specific sound and movement that you're going to hear there. The last chord progression we're going to go over is the 2-5-1 chord progression. And this one is probably most popular in jazz, or most known for jazz music, but it's used in all kinds of music too. You'll probably notice that this is the only chord progression we're going over that doesn't start on the 1 chord. It starts on the 2 chord, 2-5-1, right? In a major key, the 2 chord is always a minor chord. So what we need to do is make the 2 chord for the key of G, which happens to be an A minor chord. We can use our E minor bar chord shape. 6-string root note right here is an A on the 5th fret. So that would be an A minor bar chord using the E minor shape. And that gives us our 2 chord. The next chord is a 5 in the key of G. If you remember, that's a D. In a D chord, D major bar chord is just right over here. Keep your bar on the same fret and move to an A major bar chord shape. That D note right there on the 5th string tells us we're playing a D major bar chord. So 2, A minor, 5, D major, and then you're going to go back down to your G major bar chord for the 1. So work on that shape or the motion between those chords and just get those down. And listen to how that specific chord progression sounds. That does it for these 3 essential chord progressions that we're going over in this lesson. Now, here comes the real magic of bar chords. Now, by now you know that bar chords are movable. You can move them around anywhere. But the cool thing about these progressions that we went over is if you use bar chords to play them, the progressions are movable too. Let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna play a 1-4-5 in the key of G using our bar chords, right? G is our home bass, our key, our root note, right? But what if I want to play that same chord progression of 1-4-5 in the key of A? What do? Well, all we have to do is change our home bass or starting point, our root note. If we start with our 1 chord on an A major bar chord, right? The 5th string of this low E is an A, so that's an A major bar chord using the E shape. If we play those exact same bar chord shapes relative to where we start, we're going to be playing a 1-4-5 in the key of A major. So 1, 4, 5. Now I didn't even have to think about it. All I had to do was memorize this shape and this shifting relative to where I started and move it up to where A was my key or root note or starting point. And you can do this in any key you want. If I wanted to play a 1-4-5 in the key of C, all I would have to do is change my starting point to a C, which I can do by putting my bar on the 8th fret here and playing a C bar chord shape. And this is really helpful when you get thrown into a situation where you just want to jam with your friends, you don't know a song very well, or you have to read a chord chart. Now, to help you practice these bar chords moving around and these progressions, I have a new jam track for you. It's basically the same one we've been using, but the bass and the piano are taken out, so you can work on whichever one of these progressions you want. You can think of this as kind of a glorified metronome. It's a little bit more fun to play with the drum track than it is just a click, right? So here's how this might sound. I'm going to play through all of these progressions we just went over using these bar chords. I know this is a lot of information to absorb in one lesson, but what I really want you to do is just concentrate on getting these progressions down with these bar chord shapes and then moving them around to new keys. If you need to reference the E and A string note names, that's totally fine. Go ahead and do that. In the next lesson, we're going to shift gears and make sure you know some of the most essential open chords that you're going to be using as a rhythm guitarist. If you have any questions, leave them here in the comments or email me, Nate@guitarsystem.com. See ya.